Toss-up 1. The army of Charles IX was quickly defeated by a contingent of these troops at the Battle of Kircholm. In a message to the Pope, a king who had just led 3,000 of these troops to victory wrote, "I came, I saw, God conquered."
Like cavalry?
Prompt.
Hussars?
Yes.
Oh,
Bonus. The long 1937 battle over the city featured the so-called 800 heroes who covered a retreat by holding the Sihang warehouse supplied by the girl guide Yong Hui Min for 10 points each. Name this city. A decade earlier, it was the site of a horrific nationalist massacre of communists during the April 12th incident, after which it was run by Green Gang gangsters for a decade.
yes, Shanghai.
The Battle of Shanghai is sometimes called the Yangtze version of this battle along the Volga River, in which Soviets repulsed a German attack at the cost of over 1 million casualties.
Stalingrad.
Just after the capture of Shanghai, this U.S. ship built in Shanghai was sunk while it was anchored along the Yangtze. Along with the Allison incident, the sinking of this ship turned U.S. public opinion against Japan.
I have no idea. Yeah, I've never heard of a ship built.
Answer.
The
USS Panay. 20 points. Toss-up 2. In a novel written in this format, mosquitoes die upon contact with the dumb ox Yanzhao due to the massive amounts of pesticides that he spreads around the village of Ma Qiao. The princess of Ate dies upon looking into a mirror and seeing the poisoned letters inscribed on her eyelids in a novel in this format, in which the Khan of the title People invites Christian, Jewish, and Islamic scholars to interpret a dream. A work of this type quotes verses by that learned and ingenious cleric, Father Gasalaska Jape, about success and retribution. A 1755 work of this type calls oats a grain which in England...
Dictionary?
Yes.
Okay.
That is a dictionary.
Your bonus. A style of these objects called a borsa or purse became popular in 13th century Germany, 20 points each. In these religious objects, transparent examples of which are called phylacteries. Speaking varieties of these objects are shaped like body parts.
Drums? No, drums?
Reliquary. Reliquaries were made for the separate burial of hearts and holders of this title. Louis the 17th, who was supposed to receive this title but never did, had his heart reburied next to his parents in 2003.
Saints?
I have kings of France.
No.
Though many made reliquaries for their body parts or organs, almost every French king from the 10th through 18th centuries was interred in this Gothic church, rebuilt by Abbot Suger in the 12th century.
Saint Denis, right? Okay. Saint Denis.
Yes.
Okay, good job.
10 points.
I get so I got really confused by that. Like reliquary.
Toss-up 3. Due to relativistic causality, two of these objects evaluated at space-like separation must always commute. The Whiteman axioms provide a rigorous foundation for the theory of these objects. Operators representing these objects are applied to the vacuum to create quantum states in second quantization. Textbooks on these objects...
Oh, so you mean like fields?
Yes. Bonus. Benzene oxide and oxypin undergo the rare valence type of this phenomenon, in which a single or double bond is rapidly formed or broken. For 10 points each, name this phenomenon in which compounds rapidly interconvert between constitutional isomers by moving a proton, as with ketones and enols.
Oh, that's tautomerization.
This simple sugar with chemical formula C6H12O6 tautomerizes between straight chain and ring forms. Sucrose is composed of fructose and this other monosaccharide.
Glucose.
Proline catalysis of an asymmetric aldol reaction yields one of these compounds, a nitrogen-containing analog of enols that tautomerizes into an imine.
Oh, so imine is tautomeric to
Answer.
amide?
Enamine.
Yeah, that's not it.
Toss-up 4. A campaign ad in this country featured the Dr. Pansy Lai, who was nearly censured over her alleged support over conversion therapy. The controversial book, The Gender Fairy, about two transgender children, is from this country. A mural in this country that depicted George Michael as a saint was defaced by a man who stated, "I'm defending my religion." In December 2017, thousands of Twitter users from this country tweeted, "Eat shit Lyle," referring to the conservative lobbyist Lyle Shelton. In this country, Liberal Party Senator Dean Smith introduced an amendment that changed the words "a man and a woman" into "a union of two people" in its 1961 Marriage Act, in accordance with the 61% of voters who chose yes on a November...
Australia?
Yes. Critic Kenneth Tynan's pejorative term for middle-brow, mid-20th century British drama, the Loamshire play, is named in reference to a fictional county that this author regularly used as a setting, for 10 points each. Named as author of a Loamshire novel about an activist who accidentally kills a constable during a riot that breaks out on the day that his candidate, Harold Transome, loses a parliamentary election.
Maybe like William Makepeace Thackeray.
This is George Eliot.
Okay.
The chaplain Obadiah Slope delivers an unpopular sermon against chanting in church services near the start of the most popular of the 6 novels this author set in the fictional county of Barsetshire. Answer?
Wow.
Anthony Trollope. This author agglomerated several southwest English counties into the fictional area of Wessex, where he set novels like Far from the Madding Crowd and Tess of the D'Urbervilles. 10 points. 5. In a scene first shown in this publication, a man states, "Oh no, my lord, I assure you that parts of it are excellent," while reassuring a bishop of the quality of an egg. This publication debuted an image with a pedestal engraved with the words E pluribus unum, on which a black woman is chained to an American flag, a reaction to Hiram Powers, the Greek slave. Kaiser Wilhelm II looks on from above as Otto von Bismarck leaves the ship, metaphorically dropping the pilot, in an image from this publication by John Tenniel. While writing about the great exhibition for this publication, Douglas Jerrold coined the nickname Crystal Palace. This magazine, also called the London Charivari, is in tribute to a similar French publication, was named for a stock puppet character.
Puck.
No. Who often quarrels with Judy. For 10 points, name this British magazine known for its satirical cartoons.
Punch.
Yes.
One good thing also.
Puck is a thing too.
Okay. And it's also like a character.
But it's in it's a US magazine.
Yeah. And your bonus. In alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, the elastase released from the primary granules of these cells damages connective tissue in the lung or liver. For 10 points each, identify these most abundant white blood cells, whose nuclei characteristically have 3 to 5 distinct segments.
T cells, B cells.
Macrophages.
Answer?
Monocytes.
Neutrophils. Like macrophages, neutrophils are part of the myeloid lineage, meaning that they originate from stem cells in this tissue located inside bones.
Yellow bone marrow, red bone marrow.
Marrow's fine. These immature myeloid cells, which have been found to inhibit T cell activation in cancer settings, can express markers for both neutrophils and macrophages.
Regulatory T cells.
Myeloid-derived suppressor cells, or MDSCs.
Okay.
10 points on that bonus. Toss of 6. The protagonist of a novel in this genre entertains fellow passengers on a stalled train by describing frogs being hunted en masse to supply restaurants with legs. The compassionate hero Winnetou stars in several popular German-language novels in this genre, written by Karl May. A novel in this genre ends with the protagonist toppling a giant boulder to thwart several polygamous Mormons in hot pursuit. The drifters, Art Croft and Gil Carter, get caught up in the hanging of 3 innocent men by a mob suspecting them of being thieves in a novel in this genre by Walter Van Tilburg Clark titled The Oxbow Incident. In honor of the author of the first major novel in this genre, The Virginian.
It's a Western. This sounds like Western things. So
The goddess of warfare in Lower Egypt was worshipped as a dual goddess with her Upper Egyptian counterpart, Sekhmet, for whom I teach. Name this Egyptian protector goddess, the wife of Ptah. Bast, or Bastet. Bast is often shown carrying a sistrum, and an object that scholars denote with this Greek word. Though probably derived from the word for storm, this word's actual meaning is unclear, since it denotes both a goat skin owned by Zeus and a similar possession of Athena's.
Aegis.
This patron deity of miners is also frequently depicted holding a sistrum. This cow-headed goddess also governed love and fertility. 20. This compound is the starting molecule of a reaction whose 8 proton and electron transfers were mapped using stopped flow experiments by Lowe and Thornley. This compound can be obtained at up to 99.999% purity by preferentially capturing it in a bed of zeolite in pressure swing adsorption. Though it prefers to bind metals end-on, this compound can serve as a bridging ligand in either a side-on or end-on manner. An enzyme that uses an iron-molybdenum cluster as a cofactor catalyzes the reduction of this compound. Substituting a diazonium compound with a different nucleophile, as in the Sandmeyer reaction, liberates this gas?
Nitrogen.
Yes. Salvador Martinez Cuvez was in charge of the challenging task of transferring the artwork in this building to canvases, for 10 points each. In this building, whose ground floor artworks were placed on separate halves according to the gender of its subjects. Men were represented by a pilgrimage to San Isidro, and women by La Leocadia, among others.
It's like something in Spain.
Oh, really? Okay. What's the name?
Answer?
The Prado.
Quinta del Sordo. The Quinta del Sordo was this artist's late-life villa, which he decorated with Saturn devouring his son and other morbid and violent black paintings.
Yeah.
Wait,
A small early painting by Goya depicts a yard in one of these places centered on a pair of brawling naked men. Upper-class women observed Tom Breakwell in one of these places in the final scene of A Rake's Progress.
Hospital or a time.
They're taking like surgery.
Oh, wait.
Like a medical school.
Yeah. So like an
Answer?
operating theater.
I have an asylum.
I'm sorry.
That's what I read.
I think I might be
10
thinking
points.
of the more stages of cruelty or something.
Toss of 8. In a piano piece by this composer, an odd syncopated rhythm appears in the second of 6 variations and an arietta in 9/16 time. That piece's other movement is marked maestoso. He's not Chopin, but a piano sonata.
Is this Beethoven?
Yes.
Nice.
Good
Buzz.
What do you got?
During the First Punic War, the Battle of Agrigentum resulted in Roman control of this island, which then became a key source of grain throughout the Republic and Empire, for 10 points each. In this large island, the site of the majority of land-based combat during the war. The Romans called it Trinacria for its roughly triangular shape and later conquered its city of Syracuse.
Sicily.
This man commanded Carthaginian forces in Sicily during the First Punic War and crushed rebels in the Mercenary War before he died in battle in Iberia. He had his 9-year-old son dip his hands in blood and swear an oath of eternal hatred against Rome. Hanno the Great lost this 256 BC naval battle off the Sicilian coast to a force led by Marcus Atilius Regulus. Over 100,000 mariners took part on both sides, making it by far the largest naval battle in classical antiquity.
Yeah,
I don't think I have this.
they were like anchoring.
Yeah.
Answer? Battle of Cape Ecnomus. 20 on that. 9. Max Jones' biography of this man portrays him as a martyr to science whose death united political radicals. Roland Huntford, who published unedited versions of this man's journal, was criticized for his portrayal of this man by one of this man's biographers, Ranulph Fiennes. This man's final writing says, "For God's sake, look after our people." A cross on Observation Hill commemorates a party led by this man, one of whose members said, "I am just going outside and maybe some time, but never return."
Scott?
Yes.
Yeah, we went to the South Pole.
Enter the following about times when they were collective winners of the Time Person of the Year for 10 points each. The 2006 distinction belonged to the millions of people worldwide who provide content for the internet and was publicized as this specific word.
You.
Yes, the winners in 1968 were Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and William Anders, the crew aboard this spacecraft. The photo Earthrise was taken during this mission, which was the first American manned mission to orbit the moon.
Apollo 8.
The 8.
I think so.
Answer.
Apollo 8.
Yes, the American women who took the title in 1975 included this author of Against Our Will, Men, Women, and Rape. She argued that pornography should not be protected under the First Amendment in her essay, Let's Put Pornography Back in the Closet.
Yeah. Is it McKinnon?
Sure.
Okay. McKinnon?
Susan Brown Miller.
Okay.
Twenty.
Yeah, she's come up before. We should block that.
Yeah, sure.
10. In a book titled For This Process, an author recalls how his classmates were punished for performing a certain action by being forced to wear signs around their neck with phrases like, I am a donkey. An essay by Eve Tuck and K. Wayne Yang argues that this process is not a metaphor. Kwasi Wiredu has argued for a conceptual form of this process, which another text describes as a program of complete disorder. In a book titled For This Process, one author described his efforts to reverse the alienation caused by a cultural bomb through writing in Kikuyu rather than in English. In The Wretched of the Earth, Franz Fanon argued that this process must involve violence, and the title
Bullying?
-5. And the title of a book by Ngugi wa Thiong'o pairs this process with the mind. For 10 points, name this process of removing non-indigenous people.
Decolonization.
Yes.
Bullying on a national level.
Big
That's
one
one
way to
book.
think of
It's
it.
getting even. Not bullying.
Bonus. This man split with fellow party members Victor Berger and Morris Hillquit over whether to expel the IWW for 10 points each, and a Socialist Party leader who also disagreed with Hillquit and Berger about the need for electoral success, as he ran for president unsuccessfully 5 times starting in 1900. Debs' 1920 presidential run, his last and most successful, took place despite him undergoing this sort of experience at the time.
Yeah, prisons.
Yeah. Debs may have run in 5 presidential elections, but this Presbyterian minister and pacifist ran 6 times for the Socialist Party, starting in 1928. In 1937, he formed the Keep America Out of War Congress.
His name's Norris.
I have no idea.
Norris.
Norman Thomas.
Okay, that's not what I was thinking.
20 points.
I might
And
know.
it's halftime. I have a score of 245-15. Agree? Okay.
I agree.
Is there a sub?
Yeah, I mean, I might have 235, I'm not sure.
What do you have after 5 questions?
95.
Okay, I started with 0, 30, 50,
Yeah.
80,
Yeah.
110.
Oh, that's 10.
The bonus was number 4. George Eliot, Anthony Trollope, Thomas Hardy. You tended, right?
Yeah.
Just got Hardy.
Yeah.
Okay,
So 235 is right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's right.
Go down from
If you
here.
get to 100, I think.
Okay, so Jared is out, right? And Ethan is in.
You wanna play?
That was a little tight. That wasn't like a, yeah.
Trying to beat your chest when you was in, like.
That wasn't like a tight thing. That was like-
Why'd you say
There's like
that
some
you wanted to
pressure
play?
there.
It was like, it'd take a while.
Maybe I just hit myself a little bit.
I got this.
Yeah, I was like burping a lot in one round. Not sure if that was distracting to anyone.
No, I didn't notice.
Okay, good. I was keeping it under wraps. I was like, oh boy.
Alright. Here is toss-up 11. This author created a character who sees an apparition of a young boy's face after stealing an offering of grapes set in front of a bronze statue of Pan. In a story by this author, the Duke of Ska uses a mystical process called Copernicary to replace politicians with angels. A recurring character created by this author of The Music on the Hill and The Ministers of Grace poses as Stanislaus, the secretary of a bishop who was ostensibly plotting to massacre 26 Jews in order to administer an unrest cure to J.P. Huddle. A story by this author ends with a boy making a piece of toast after Mrs. DeRopp is killed by the title Polecat Ferret. In his best-known story...
Kawasaki.
Yes. This phrase appears for the final time in the poem Island just before the lines Good Morning Daddy, Ain't You Heard, which bookend a book-length suite titled for its montage, for 10 points each. Identify this 2-word thing whose potential to fester like a sore and then run or dry up like a raisin in the sun is the subject of the poem Harlem.
Dream deferred.
This Harlem Renaissance poet of the Weary Blues and Negro Steaks and Rivers wrote a poem asking what happens to a dream deferred. In another poem from Montage of a Dream Deferred, Hugh states that this 6-word motto is the reason I stay alive.
I don't know what
Dig and be dug in return. 20. Toss-up 12. This place names a series of 14 meetings of pre-millenarian Christians led by James Brooks, known as its namesake Bible conferences. The anti-accommodationist resolutions adopted by a radical organization named for this place were drafted in the home of Mary B. Talbert. Following the 1908 Springfield riot, 7 members of an organization named for this place, including suffragist Mary White Ovington and anti-imperialist Moorfield Story, founded the NAACP. A city that was named after this place contains the town of Lundy's Lane, where a War of 1812 battle took place.
Niagara Falls?
Yes.
Yeah.
At its premiere, this opera's composer insisted on casting the tenor Carlo Guasco in the role of its title bandit, which is intended for a contralto range, for 10 points each, in this opera, whose 3rd act depicts a visit by Don Carlos to the tomb of Charlemagne. In 1904, it was the first opera to be recorded completely.
You sleep again.
Answer. Ernani. This composer used a drama by Victor Hugo as the basis for his Ernani. This prolific composer of Otello and Rigoletto is sometimes referred to jokingly as Joe Green, a translation of his name into English.
You said BBRD?
Yes. Verdi also wrote a grand opera titled for the city that centers on the lovers Gaston and Helene. Joseph Haydn's opera Armida is based on a witch from an Italian poem named after this city.
Florence.
Answer. Jerusalem. 10 on that bonus. Oops. Toss of 13. In a paper subtitled The Endless Dispute, Jacob Rempel summarized the difficulty of determining the evolutionary origin of the head of animals in this phylum due to the nebulous nature of the pre-oral region and the labrum. Several fin R cells form a transparent structure called a rhabdome at the center of the hexagonal ommatidia of members of this phylum. Rift Valley fever and West Nile are caused by arboviruses, meaning that they are transmitted by members of this phylum. Animals in this phylum absorb waste from their hemolymph through a system of Malpighian tubules. Until recently,
Like arthropods?
that's right.
Yes.
Yes, infect your arthropods.
Your bonus. In one thought experiment, this thinker postulated that smell was the sense that contributes the least to human knowledge, for 10 points each. Named this French advocate of sensationism who postulated that a statue that is organized inside like a human, but with a soul that has never received an idea.
Kant.
Etienne Bonneau de Condillac. Etienne Bonneau de Condillac distinguished between two different languages of action in a 1755 treatise on these beings. Peter Singer has more recently pushed for the liberation of these beings through practices like vegetarianism.
Animals?
Yeah.
Animals?
Yes. Condillac also wrote in this discipline, which he divided into two phases of progress and decline with his theory of true price. R.G. Collingwood wrote a book on the idea of this discipline.
Economics.
Economics.
History. 10
Oh.
points. 14 members of this non-African religious tradition avoided touching white roosters because they were associated with the moon. According to this tradition, 3 was the first male number and represented harmony, while 2 was the first female number and represented opinion. They're not Neoplatonists, but members of this religious tradition cited the 71 golden verses as a source of moral authority. Members of this tradition strictly practiced vegetarianism due to its founders' belief in the transmigration of souls.
It's like the Pythagorean religion.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was.
Is there something about Google like not eating beans?
Yeah.
Your bonus. This sensitive style composer's innovative pieces include a trio sonata titled A Conversation Between a Cheerful and Melancholy Man. 4 points each. Name this composer, whose best known piece is a C minor solfeggetto for keyboard. Answer. C.P.E. Bach. C.P.E. Bach was called the Berlin Bach to distinguish him from his prolific brother Johann Christian, who composed in this city. Joseph Haydn's last symphonies were composed in this city, where the proms take place. It's generally agreed that C.P.E. Bach composed his 9-movement piece with this title for an audition in Berlin in 1745, but it's unclear for whom. Karl owned both the D and E flat versions of the J.S. Bach piece with this title, the latter of which omits the Christmas hymns of the former. Answer.
Magnificat.
Yes.
Good pull. Good.
20 points. And toss of 15. Description acceptable. This poem is referenced throughout a song whose third verse begins, "Got hitched, I bought a frying pan, fried eggs my wife eats like a man." The author of this poem ignored the suggestion of the yellow roses for its first line in conscious rejection of classical allusions. This poem is the most enduring of its author's 3 contributions to the collection A Spring Day, which was mainly written by his disciples. Donald Keene translated this poem's first adjective as ancient. Allen Ginsberg's onomatopoeic rendition of this poem ends with the proclamation kerplunk. In its original language, this poem's cutting word is ya, and its seasonal reference is kawazu. According to legend, this poem was the reply to a koan posed by the author's Zen master. For 10 points, name this poem about a sound heard in a pond.
Frog.
Yes.
Okay.
That's enough.
So what? Literature, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Your bonus. This essay traces its first title concept's historical progression through civil, political, and social phases. For 10 points each, identify this T.H. Marshall essay that claims that in the 20th century, its first title concept, a supposed principle of equality, has been at war with its second title concept, a system of inequality. Answer. Citizenship and social class. Marshall's theory of social citizenship inspired Nancy Fraser and Linda Gordon's essay, Contract versus Charity, which examines inequalities associated with this characteristic, including an average pay gap of roughly 20%.
Like gender.
Fraser and Gordon have both published scathing critiques of the methods for closing the gender pay gap proposed by this liberal feminist 2013 book, Lean In.
Oh, that's like the Sandberg.
Yeah. 20. 16. The linearized response of celestial bodies to these phenomena is modeled by the three love numbers, H, K, and L. These phenomena can cause inelastic bodies to gain or lose angular momentum and enter the Cassini state. These phenomena generate resonant ringing oscillations at the periapsis of the orbits of heartbeat binary star systems. Very strong instances of these phenomena entrain potentially habitable extrasolar eyeball planets. Strains caused by these phenomena heat the interior of...
Like tidal forces?
Yes.
I was thinking, like, I have learned about the love numbers before. Forgot what they actually were.
This essay traces it, which is that one. Your bonus. The electron temperature, electron density, and electric potential can all be measured in these substances using a linear probe for 10 watts each. In these substances, most or all of whose atoms exist in an ionized form, they are sometimes called the fourth state of matter. The presence of mobile charge carriers in plasmas leads to this reduction in the Coulomb force, in which electric fields drop off exponentially on the scale of a Debye length.
This is still kind of screening, right? Or is it maybe quasi-neutrality? Is that quasi-neutrality?
Screening. The Debye length is identical to the screening length in the semi-classical model of electrons in solids named for Llewellyn Thomas and this physicist, whose namesake liquid describes low-energy excitations of interacting electrons.
I mean, okay, so the thing is, they mentioned the Ledinger, which is like a thing with fermions already. But
Answer.
Ledinger.
It is Enrico Fermi.
Yeah, fermion. I should have said that. That was stupid. Sorry, I got jumped.
Toss-up 17. One of these inanimate objects belonging to Yamato Takeru's wife Tachibana Hime washes up on the shore and is placed atop her burial mound. Because banshees are often depicted with silver examples of these objects, picking one up is considered bad luck. Lemminkainen's mother learns of her son's death after she spots one of these objects bleeding. Along with scissors and a razor, Coolhoop recovers one of these objects from between Truith's ears. To keep her safe from Yamata no Orochi,
Ears.
-5, Susanoo turns Kushinada Hime into one of these objects. Izanagi breaks off a piece of one of these objects to use as a torch during his descent into the underworld. A commandment given by Guru Gobind Singh requires that baptized Sikhs keep a kanga, an example of for 10 points, what grooming item used to care for a part of the body hidden under the turban.
Oh, like a brush or a comb?
Yes.
What's that? What was the layer?
Bonus. This author's story idea for a short documentary film states in its entirety, representatives of different food products manufacturers tried to open their own packaging for 10 points each. Identify this American author of flash fiction whose third collection of stories, Samuel Johnson is Indignant, explains its title with the simple fact that Scotland has so few trees. Her other collections include varieties of disturbance.
Smith.
Lydia Davis. Davis's wordplay-heavy story, A Mown Lawn, first appeared in the Quarterly Concern of this publishing house founded by Dave Eggers, which also maintains a humor website called Its Internet Tendency.
Brown.
McSweeney's. Davis's story, In a House Besieged, bears significant similarities to this Argentinian author's short story, House Taken Over, which he included in his collection Blow Up. He also wrote the experimental novel Hopscotch.
Oh, shit.
You should.
Fun
Answer. Julio Cortázar. Nothing in that bonus. Toss-up 18. The first recorded use of this river's current name, which may mean our boat, is by Alvise da Calamostu, who met the Damel of Cayor along the coast just to its south. A city at the mouth of this river has a bridge named for Governor Louis Federbe, who recruited a famous regiment of marksmen, or tirailleurs. After a capital was changed in 1902, a city at this river's mouth called Saint Louis went into decline. Land just south of this so-called River of Gold was governed by the Wolof Empire. Arab geographers, like Al-Idrisi, incorrectly consider this river a western extension of the Niger. The second president of a country named for this river was Abdou Diouf, who peacefully succeeded a founder of the Negritude movement. For 10 points, what African river names a country led by Leopold Senghor? Congo? Nope.
Malta?
No, this is Senegal.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wait,
north of the.
Senegal
Okay,
River.
I was like, is there a Senegal? Because I knew he was from Senegal, but I was like, no, I
yeah, I also didn't know about
It's like the Niger, the Congo, like, these are rivers.
Yeah.
I guess
I was
everything
thinking
just named
Niger
after a
earlier.
river. Except for all things out there.
Toss up 19. In 1904, Matisse twice painted a scene centered on a water pitcher, once in the style of Signac and once imitating this artist. Glazes and Metzinger distinguished this artist's profound reality from the superficial reality of Courbet and Du Cubisme, and wrote that to understand this artist is to foresee Cubism. Paul Ranson and Pierre Bonnard, among others, observe a work by this artist in a Maurice Denis painting titled Homage to this Artist. The 1907 Salon d'Automne retrospective of this artist included his portrait of his wife Hortense in a red dress, a painting of two men in brown hats seated at a table, and a large painting in which tree trunks form a triangular frame around a group of nudes at a river. Both Matisse and Picasso supposedly called this man the father of us all. Rodin Points named this painter of the card players and the large bathers a French post.
So say so.
Yes.
It was Cézanne.
I thought they said something about
Oh, okay.
Yeah, really.
That's like,
More bonus. This technique requires solving the indicial polynomial to find the lowest power present in the solution. 10 points each. Name this technique for solving linear differential equations in which you guess that the solution can be expressed as a power series, and then solve term by term for the coefficients of that series.
Series expansion. That's what I would have called it. I think that's what it's called. Series expansion.
The Frobenius method. The method of Frobenius is used to solve differential equations of this order. While finding critical points of a function, the sign of the derivative of this order distinguishes local maxima from local minima. The method of Frobenius is typically applied in the neighborhood of a regular one of these points. Every isolated point of this type is either essential, natural, or a pole.
Singularity. Yeah. Singularity.
Sure. That is 20 points. That's Math 341. Flashbacks. Toss up the last. An essay by this thinker quotes the line, "One cannot bear to join the madness, but if he does not do so, he will not share in the spoils," from a famous tembang to illustrate the discrepancy between moral prescriptions and material rewards. Talal Asad criticized this thinker for ignoring religion as a source of social power and instead overemphasizing the moods and motivations encouraged by systems of belief. This author of the essay, Religion as a Cultural System, wrote about the development of a certain religion in Morocco and Indonesia in his book, Islam Observed.
Gears.
Yes.
Yes.
After a character in this play, that's the wrong bonus. Hugh Willoughby led an expedition of this group whose entire crew perished, possibly due to carbon monoxide poisoning, 10 points each, in this trading company that evolved from the Company of Merchant Adventurers after the favorable treatment of Richard Chancellor. After the execution of Charles I, Alexis expelled its members from his realm.
The Muscovy Company?
This Tsar welcomed Chancellor to Russia and granted the Muscovy Company trading privileges. As his nickname may suggest, he was less kind to his citizens.
Yeah, I've been terrible.
Yeah. Chancellor landed at this port on the White Sea, which lent its name to the settlement that became Sitka, Alaska. The AA line, which marked the end of the objective of Operation Barbarossa, ran from Astrakhan to this city.
Yeah, but I think you can just say everything, right? I mean, that's like.
I think you have to say the extra thing as well.
Okay, you say it.
Archangels.
Sure. Both are fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like
30 points on that bonus. The final score is 410-65.